Hey, Richard Mellor here, Facts Working People. I wanted to actually write about this, but I'm going to try and talk about it a little bit. It's funny, I have such a hard time when I'm talking into this, but when I'm sitting down the pub like I was the other night, it's easier, or at work, to talk politics with other workers. But there was something I wanted to raise. I've been figuring out how to raise it and connect it to other things. I was out in the pub the other night, and I got to talking to some guys, and the issue of Black Lives Matter came up, and one of the guys says, I don't hear this too often, but one of the guys raises about Blue Lives Matter. When he said that, I had to step back a minute, because I try to imagine myself if we were in Nazi Germany in 1938, when they were dragging Jews out of the schools to check to see whether they were circumcised or not, smashing up their shop windows, dragging them out of their homes. Kristallnacht, I'm talking about, in 1938. And they came out with a flyer that said Jewish lives matter. Everybody would say, no, Christian lives matter, German lives matter. It's just nonsense. And the problem is, it's funny, I was talking to a cop I know. I've known him a long time. I might have known him before he was a cop, even, I can't remember. But I don't see him too often. I bumped into him the other day. But he's a white cop, and he knows my position on the police. I don't have the issue of the police. For me, it's a social question and a political question. I'm not driven by individual hatred of policemen or things like that. And so I related that to him, about Blue Lives Matter, and he said, well, what they mean is White Lives Matter. Now, this is a white cop, and he knows what that means by Blue Lives Matter. And he says to me, plenty of them don't have too much love for us either. And he's absolutely correct. That's what it means when a white co-worker says that, and it's almost always white workers. When they say Blue Lives Matter. And so the thing about that is this, is that, and I should let you into a little secret, is that when you raise the question of a white guy raises the question of White Lives Matter like that, black people know exactly what you mean. You mean exactly what that cop said, and what I'm saying is it means White Lives Matter. Behind that, what it means is you're saying to the black folks, you're saying, or to people of colour in general, I'm talking specifically of black folks here, you're saying to them, your issues don't matter. I mean, I have no illusions in the Black Lives Matter movement. I've met some people from it that are decent. It's not the black working class in motion. There's a lot of academic lefty types in it and so forth. So I have no illusions in it, but it arose out of a real need. Its issues are right, and the slogan is right. There's nothing wrong with that slogan. And so I'll let you into a little secret, is that they know what you mean. And what you mean is that their issues don't matter. You're not validating any of their concerns about police abuse and violence. You're not validating any of the concerns about the conditions, the fact that over 50% of the people in prisons, 1 in 4 black folks are wards of the court. All of these statistics that are what shows the disproportionate effects of society on those people, on people of colour and on black people especially. That's what you're saying to them. Most of them will not say anything because it's pointless, because they know what you really mean, and you're not saying what you really mean. And why don't you say what you really mean? You don't say it because it's a racist position. So you can't say, well, there's no such thing. It's not. You're just whining and complaining like you always do. There's no difference in discrimination of housing, education, blah blah blah, and you're not validating that. That's what you really mean. Now, part of that is the immense power of the American media, the capitalist media in this country, and everything else. But there's also, and some of it is that for 3 centuries. In this country, if you, Lerone Bennett, he was a black writer that, I think he's still alive. I haven't read much of his stuff, but I did read a lot of that book he wrote called The Shaping of Black America. And he talks in there of how it took 3 centuries or more to convince white people to worship their skin. He points out how in the early days, if whites showed love or solidarity or feelings for black people, they suffered. They could be killed. There was a conscious effort in the birth of this country, but from the European invasions I'm talking, a conscious effort to weaken the bond between the poor blacks, poor whites, Germans, Scots, Irish, English, and so forth, and weaken that bond. If there's 2 people standing in crap at 12 hours a day, you're going to build some bond. And it did build bonds. And Ted Allen, the author, wrote 2 volumes, Theodore Allen, on the invention of the white race. And he studied all of the records of Virginia, the 1607 colony, and how they consciously divided people up by working class poor, the slaves, bondsmen, indentured servitudes, all those sort of things. How they consciously, particularly after Bacon's rebellion, the second half of the 17th century, how they consciously found a way to divide that bond, the working bond of the working class at the time, and that was around the question of colour. And they made whiteness a race and black a race, and that's how they did it. And look at what it did. It made the Irish immigrant the same race as the English bourgeois or the English. No way. The Irish were considered the savage race. They were persecuted for hundreds of years, much like the black people here. Wasn't the same. A lot of right-wing Irish people will try and say it's just like slavery. It's not like slavery. But the first volume in that book by Ted Allen is about Ireland, and it's very useful to read that. So that's part of, and I think I can't remember who it was that made it the first comment, called it the poison bait, that they gave white certain privileges to the white population, the white working class population, and they've concentrated on that and the propaganda over centuries. So part of it is that, part of it is the immense power of the media in the capitalist media in the U.S. And they, if you think about it, Kaepernick, for example, the football player who took a knee, they made that in the media all about the flag and veterans. Now the U.S. government and the capitalist class in this country don't give a damn about veterans or anything like that. But they made that about, they go to patriotism and nationalism. It's poisonous stuff. So there's that. And the third issue for me is it's a bit like with the Protestants in Northern Ireland, with the Jews in Israel, the white population here, among some of them, I'm sure, even possibly unconsciously, is that if the blacks get a foothold, they'll take it out on us for 300 years of blah blah blah. You see, I'm sure that exists too. This question, as it does with Protestants, they appeal to the Protestant working class, and in Northern Ireland, they say, look, if the Catholics, you get a united Ireland, you'll be a minority, and they'll get you back for everything that's been done to them and so forth. Everything to prevent whites, workers, and black workers from coming together. It would be much better that, as I say, this policeman knows what you mean by Blue Lives Matter, and so all black people know what you mean by that. They won't trust you. You go down in their eyes. If you're trying to build a movement, if you're trying to build the union, if you're a union guy trying to build solidarity, and they know that you're saying that, they won't trust you. So I just wanted to bring that up. And the other thing is people, you get the right wingers always saying about, well, you always get attacked for being a racist if you speak your mind on this and speak. I've never been attacked. Well, very, very rarely have I ever been attacked. If you don't give anybody, I'm talking about black folks and Latinos mostly, the people I'm referring to here, but particularly black folks, is that if you don't give them a reason to suspect you of being racist, they're not going to accuse you of being racist. But if you're going to go Blue Lives Matter, then you're not going to be trusted. It's as simple as that. If you don't want to be labelled one, don't do anything that gives them reason to. Now, you'll always get the odd person that will use it. It's very, very rare. I worked for 30 years here in a water district with black people. Black people didn't want, nor women actually on the job, that were struggling for equality. They wanted to be treated fairly, that's all. And there was one I know, and I'm always suspicious of them, and now he's a boss. I knew where he was. He was a boss, but there's always one bad apple everywhere. But in the main, that's not the case. And it's not the case with women that want equality or anything else. But I want to urge you to, it would be much more honest if you said what you felt. And it would be even better if you try to think about why you felt that way. I wasn't raised here. When I came here, I put a thing on Facebook not long ago where I had my birth, it was my mother's discharge, some discharge in the Rangoon in Rangoon in Burma when she was discharged. I was 6 months old, and it said religion RC, race E. I was English. I became white though here. I always joke with some of the European white guys that come here, and well, I'm Norwegian, I'm Hungarian. I said, just a white guy over here, mate. That's it. You're a white guy over here. And so these are just a few things that I wanted to say. I mean, they got that, the mass media here got that whole issue of Kaepernick a mild gesture about the crisis affecting the black people because of social discrimination. It's not even if you think of it as, well, it's a bad word, being racist is a bad word, or just this, that and the other. That's a minor detail. The major question of racism in this country is and it's not the only country that has racism. The main problem is that it's embedded in the system. It's part of the system, and it's part of the system as a divide and rule tactic to keep workers apart. And it's used, you can just, if you look at it closely, that's how it is. And the big failing, and I'll end on it here, is that who can affect that more than anybody in this country is the leaders of the workers' organisations, the trade unions. There's 14 million in it. There's millions, billions over the decades that we've given to the Democratic Party, a capitalist party that will never solve our problems for us. They could have, the leaders of that movement could change everything, but they don't. In Kentucky, as I've said before on this blog, they came out to attack some of the more militant and aggressive folks, teachers and parents and black folks that were fighting against the state. It's a right-wing governor, manufacturer, hedge fund manager, and they were asking the unions there, the education unions, who were fighting against cuts in pensions, just all of the things around education. They were asking them, please. They tried to pass a gang legislation, a gang ordinance that would terribly affect our communities, give the police more power, and all they asked was that they oppose it publicly, and they wouldn't do that. That's a big weakness, and that's something, if you're in a union, we will never, first for me, we can never build a democratic socialist society or world unless we deal with this question of racism and patriarchy and sexism and every other form of divide and rule, of social division. The British were masters at it. In India, in Ireland, in Israel, they were masters at it. And the leaders of the working class have to have a platform and a program and a strategy to combat that. Because I believe that when workers move into struggle, there's a very powerful tendency for us to seek class allies and unite. So I'm going to have a listen to this and see. I made it last night actually, but I'd come back from the pub and I was a bit ashamed because I'd had a couple, but it wasn't so bad. But anyway, this is me, Richard Mellor. I've lost a very good friend and a partner in this blog, and it's a big gap, but I want to try and keep it going. So anyway, thanks for listening, and please feel free to send comments or anything, and we have the email on the blog there. Thank you.